Welcome to the Publish Creator Podcast, the show where books become brands and creators become CEOs. I'm your host, Rodney Washington, a book coach, brand strategist, and founder of the Published and Thriving movement. If you're an author, coach, or content creator with a book, or even just an idea, this podcast will show you how to turn it into a thriving offer, a loyal community, and a lasting legacy. Each week, I'll share real-world strategies, inspiring success stories, and behind-the-scenes coaching to help you build momentum, whether you're just publishing your first book or ready to expand into courses, memberships, and more. Because publishing isn't the end of the journey, it's the launch pad. Let's build your brand, multiply your impact, and create the freedom you deserve. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Publish Creator Podcast. I am so happy today to bring my special guests with me today, Parchelle Osumaré, who I met at a networking event here in Vegas, where we both live, recently. And we immediately, I think the moment that they walked in the room, we connected like almost instantly and struck up a conversation. So I immediately knew that I had to have them on the podcast today. Now, this episode is really going to be one you really want to pay close attention to because, as you know, I focus on helping my clients develop their physical digital book. And Parchelle helps with creating learning experiences that can be based around the book. So what we're going to talk about today is really about the different ways that we can repackage and retool and remonetize our intellectual property, meeting our audiences where they are. We lived in a time for a very long time where we pretty much, as the content creator, as a published creator, we focused on either it was going to be a book, or it was going to be an ebook, an audio book, or it was going to be a course, or it was going to be this, or it was going to be that. And I just had a conversation recently with someone just a couple of hours ago where the focus was the conversations, or the question I was being asked was, should it be an ebook? Should it be a physical book? Should it be this? Should it be that? And my response back to, which is going to piggyback into the conversation I'm having today with Parchelle, is that you meet the audience where they are. We don't just decide that it's only going to be this or the other. We provide a variety of different options because everyone has different learning modalities. And that's the core of what we're going to be talking about today. So as you're listening to this episode today, I want you to suspend for a moment how you think it has to go or it's supposed to go, and open your mind to thinking, how can I meet my audience where they are? And I'm going to go forward so far as to say this: if you provide the modality that's right for the listener or the consumer of it, it's all going to work. But it's just a matter of opening our minds to how we produce, as opposed to it only can be this, it only can be that. It can be this and it can be this and all. Alrighty. So with that said, take lots of notes. It's going to be a really great episode. Parchelle, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. That's such a good open too, Rodney. I'm very excited and grateful just to be hanging out with you again.
Yeah. We, like I said, we hit it off instantly at a local networking meeting for people who are content creators. So it was perfect that we actually were able to connect, and just like I say, instantly. I mean, like I think the second we
Yeah.
introduced ourselves, we were just like, I think I'm gonna know you for a minute. So
Yeah. It was meant to be.
yeah, absolutely. So, Parchelle, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what do you do, and how you help.
Yeah. Thank you again, Rodney. So my name is Parchelle Osumaré. I began my career as a high school math teacher, actually, which essentially kind of means I've always been obsessed with how people learn and making sure people get it. But from there, I built a video production company that actually won some awards, and eventually found my sweet spot at the intersection of storytelling, strategy, and learning design. So I get to help authors and experts leverage their body of work into immersive learning experiences, things like digital workbooks, private podcasts, interactive frameworks, right? So that their ideas, right, or the book just doesn't sit on a shelf, right? It actually moves people in the extension of what we imagine for it together. So, absolutely love helping brilliant people structure their genius in a way that, again, creates impact and income.
Hmm. I love that. Something that I'm always saying to my clients is the book, whether it is published and ready for purchase or whether it's in development, the most important part of reaching our audience, again, in the learning modality that most is appropriate for them, is to build an ecosystem around what we do. And that's a different kind of way. I think, we are now, I'll say this, we are now more, as far as publishing books go, we are much more consumer wise, we're much more aware of, okay, I want it in physical, I want it in digital, and I want it in audio, at least. And I have found for myself personally, and this was actually a tip that I learned from my business coach who learned it from Hermosi, was provide to read, listen to the book at the same time. So when I purchase books now, I get the digital version and I get the audio version, and I can read, listen at the same time. It helps me get through the content faster, and it helps me to retain more of it as opposed to just reading it or just listening to it, which reading it, I can sort of get caught up, or it inspires an idea, then I go off to think about it and I forget to go back to read the book. Or if I'm listening to it, it's kind of passive.
Mm.
So, in your experience, Parchelle, as clients who come to you and they are trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be the first step in actually developing any of this? What is your sort of questioning or process that you do with your clients with helping them develop this learning ecosystem?
Yeah, we usually start with a very strategic conversation. And the end result of the strategic conversation is understanding and answering the question of what is the highest, most leverageable, most profitable learning asset that I can create? What is number one? What's going to move the needle? So that becomes our North Star through a series of conversations where we look at everything from the creator themselves, right? What is your mission? What are you here to do? What are your constraints? What are your strengths? What time do you have for? What energy do you have, right? All those things need to be considered, right? So that way, again, we have that in consideration. The next piece that we dive into is looking at the profit paths that exist and who is willing to pay for said expertise outside of your book and in different experiences. So that's another area that we spend some time in that conversation. Next, we look at the learning journey of our customers, right? Or the readers, your customers talking to an author. Like, what is their learning journey, right? Where do they start? How are they introduced into your world? What belief shifts are happening as they progress through each of these stages that ends up in a place where maybe they are taking your body of work as certified leaders. They're now certified in your framework to go forward, right? That's kind of at the highest stage of when we look at a learning journey. So we break those down as well to find, again, what's the sweet spot here that we can really dive in. And then lastly, as you mentioned before, we look at the ecosystem of the business, right? What are the offers that surround this? What is the next step? What is the first step, right? Again, looking at from an ecosystem, how everything talks to each other within your business, those are also considerations. So if you kind of imagine a Venn diagram of all those things I just said, we end up in this very sweet spot in the middle that identifies, again, what's the highest, most leverageable asset that we can create. And the thing I love about that as well is that once we approach identifying that asset, from our experience, we are able to see so many more possibilities beyond just an online course, which is where people usually want to go first, right? When it comes to thinking of some type of learning tool or asset that exists beyond that work. There's so many other kinds that you can produce as well that would be perhaps more effective, right? They actually fit your body of work, they fit your audience, they fit all those components almost like a glove, right? If we can reimagine right, what could be possible to learn from your body of work, right? What experiences unfold there that can either happen digitally or in person or in collaboration or in partnership or in sponsorship. Like there's all kinds of things that unfold from that when we have a bit more openness. And so that's how we approach it as well. It's like we don't want to put a box on it yet and declare it, yeah, this is going to be a course or this is going to be a workbook. It's like, no, let's look at all the factors and really be clear on what is the next best, asset to produce as an extension of that book.
Right. I love that. I want to stay with this one for a moment because I don't know if you are familiar or if you heard of Amy Porterfield,
Mhm,
but she's a real, I would go and say the godmother, if you will, of online courses. She has built a multiple, I think seven-figure business and eight-figure business actually,
mhm.
based on helping other people set up online courses. Recently, she made a shift where she is no longer offering her flagship program. And it's caused a lot of stir, questioning, maybe disruption, if you will, in the marketplace because she's been teaching for 10 years about how to set up online courses and create online courses, but she's chosen to no longer continue doing that. Some of the conversations or videos that I've seen on YouTube is, I'll just say, perpetuating the narrative that online courses are dead, that no one is buying them anymore, or they're not working anymore, or that we shouldn't pursue them. Now, for someone as myself who has several online courses, and I used a platform called Searchy that I by Stu McLaren that I had all of my course content on there, and it was hours and hours and hours of not just lessons and things like that, but I also put all my coaching calls on there and everything. So it was like a platform that had, everything really built out. But what I noticed was because I was able to actually see who had logged into the platform and how
Mhm.
long they were on there, the numbers were dwindling and the length of time that they were on the platform was lessening. And this was, I say, maybe a year and a half ago. So, in some respects, it doesn't surprise me that there is a seismic shift in the way that we as content creators are using online courses. I don't want to perpetuate the narrative that online courses are quote unquote dead, but I don't know. I'd like you to talk about that or speak into that a little bit and how we as content creators who are providing educational resources, how can we structure our content in an educational platform that meets the needs of our customer while leveraging ourselves so that we are not spending all of our time doing one-on-one calls, because that's why we create courses, why we write books. We don't want to always be the one having to deliver all of the information
Mhm.
to our
Mhm.
clients. So, what is your thoughts about that? And where is the medium or where is the strategy that we need to be looking at to bridge that between having respect for our time, but delivering the best possible experience for our clients?
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. In over time, what I've realized is that when someone signs up for a course or they sign up for anything, they're not really necessarily signing up for the information. They're signing up for the result that they intend that information will make in their life, right? There's some change, there's some transformation that is imminent, right? And that is intended in just raising your hand to say, I want this information. And usually that's the first step, right? Someone raising their hand saying, I'm interested in this information. Once we're in that place, right, it's very interesting, especially with online courses. Like when I think about online courses, and I think most people who are listening can agree, it's like you likely have online courses that you have not logged into that you have not completed, right? And that's where there's a gap, right? In other words, the creator who made the course, right? If you paid for it, they've made their money for the information being available. You paid for it, but now why we haven't got to the other side of actually engaging in that course, implementing those things, really boils down to, I think, some aspects around the learning design as a conversation, but then also the experience of of those people getting the result. Right. And I think that right now as well, with so much information that is available on YouTube, anything that you want to know is available, right? The difference with how we can restructure and bridge that gap is making sure that people got what they paid for. Like, to what degree are you willing to do that? In other words, most of the time now, it's not just about a self-paced, situation. People actually right now need community. Entrepreneurship and a lot of things that we're involved in are so isolating, and it's just you and the computer screen working it out. And that's also very demotivating when we think about, again, the exits that exist in a course, right? Someone gets in and just logs out. I don't have time for this. I don't, this, I'm not really feeling connected to the person that I bought this from. It feels different. I'm not really moving forward as I like, and it ends up creating a bit of a negative experience for the learner, right? In so many ways. So one of the things that we're seeing to actually bridge that gap around courses is actually kind of spinning it into more of a cohort experience. And I know for some of us, you may not have considered, I don't want to guide people through and handhold throughout the entire process. And I'm not suggesting that you have to do that. But what if, in terms of having this course turn into something that was more of a cohort-based experience, your contribution to that process and helping them get across is making an office hour available, right? Every month or every couple of weeks, right? So that way, as people are progressing through the steps, you're actually checking in. Do you care that people are progressing through your work? Because, and I say that's so important because your brand is also connected to whether or not people got what they paid for, regardless of how much they paid for it or whatever the case is. Did they get what they came in the door for? And do you care enough to check in, to see did they get it? So it's things like that. And I say that in the sense of that there's so many different ways to bridge that gap, but I think it just takes an understanding and a willingness, and just a shift in how we're showing up for our audiences. Because just to give them the information is not enough now, right? People want to they want the result, right? So how can we get them the result? So if you have a course, maybe consider adding another upgrade tier of office hours or something that's going to allow you to be in step with them to ensure that they're getting the result. One thing I'll say too about the coaching industry in particular is that, gosh, I think it was like 30%, right? So your coaching, typical coach, right, amongst their clients, if they have 30% of their clients that are actually performing well and doing very well with their insights as a coach, that's actually considered to be doing well. In other words, 30% success rate is the standard for coaching. Right now, course completion rates are less than 5%. Okay. So what this is alluding to, again, is that people are just they're not getting to the end. They're not getting to that last step that we intended. And so as a teacher, when I taught my class, if I had saw that, I got the test back or, I'm hearing back from the students that 30% of them actually get what I'm teaching, those in my world, in my philosophy, my perspective, that comes back to me
Hmm.
as the teacher, as the one who set this
Hmm.
path forward for them with the promise of some outcome. And
Hmm.
so I think right now, just long story short, it really takes a bit more of just really reimagining the learning experiences that we're providing. And how can we make sure that they're getting to the end? So even again, having office hours or something like that available, at least it gives you the awareness to check in with people and where they're at throughout that program. So courses are going through a very interesting phase right now for sure. I think I just saw an ad where someone was promoting an online course and it was like, oh, you're going to get 80 hours of video content. It's like, that's overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? I'm paying you because I'm looking for a result,
Yeah.
right? I want this information because I'm looking for a result. And so, how we actually structure these offerings to get the result again strengthens your brand, right?
Yeah.
Because there's lots of people out right now who say, "Well, yeah, I paid for this course, and they'll say I didn't finish it, but I love the person." You're not benefiting from that. That's not a generative relationship. That's balanced, I would say. So yeah, those are my thoughts, I would say, around the courses for sure. And I'm hoping that we start to just open our eyes to being a bit more engaged in that process, right? To really be involved in the results that our customers are getting, right? How can we be more involved? How can we ensure even more that they're getting the result?
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, my I launched an online course on photography back in like 2020, I think it was, and got just lots of people on the presentation and all this stuff like that, really poured a lot into it. And I ended up with just one person signing up for it. And, I was disappointed by that, but there was a lot going on during that time. My father was not too long, I think about a month or so after that launch, about a month and a half after that launch, we lost him. And
Mm.
so it turned out to be a timing thing that I couldn't have foresaw at the time when it happened. And then the one person who did sign up didn't really show up until like months after she bought the program,
Oh,
whatever
wow.
reason. And so again, it was a timing thing. COVID was just really getting started. It was a lot going on. I launched my second course in maybe 2 years later. I had 12 people sign up for that first cohort. One person refunded because she said, "This is too technical. I can't do this." Five showed up, got their books published with me, developed work with me. Out of that original five, three still come to my weekly coaching calls that I do. I've
Mm.
offered coaching calls for the first 3 Tuesdays of every month since I launched the program. And I did that. And this was what the eye opener was for me. I had this portal with all the content in there, but they weren't logging into that. But they were coming to the calls every week. What that experience taught me was it's not about the videos and the downloads and all that stuff. It's about the connection to me.
Yes.
So, what I have found, having lived this and still living this day, I have a coaching call with them tomorrow, like 3.5 years later. I'm still working with this original cohort, and I do it because it's helped me become a better coach by continuing to support them. And because I have such appreciation for their faith in me when I was just really getting started, it's just something that I feel like I'd be missing
Hmm.
if I didn't do. Now, for those of you listening who, I'm not saying that you got to, do something like I did into perpetuity. I don't know how long I'll keep doing it, but I wouldn't personally keep doing it if I wasn't getting value out of my time with them from the perspective of it's helped me keep my ear to the ground about what's going on. So as I'm developing my podcast episodes, as I'm developing new programs, we do get benefit from being in communion with our community besides the dollar amount that we get paid. And so I think in the automate and what is it called? Passive income mentality. That is was so prevalent. And I still hear it going on, but it's so prevalent. And one of the best, I heard someone said, actually passive income's not really passive. You still have to do things
Yes.
in order to make that happen. And then you have to keep doing things to keep it continuing to happen, whether it's running ads or updating copy or whatever. And all of that can mean throwing spaghetti against the wall, trying to figure out, well, if I say it this way, does it work? If I say it this way, won't it work? Where we're sometimes guessing. But if you stay in community with the people who are your first early adopters, you don't have to wonder what to say in the messaging, in the copy, in the delivery, because they're telling you. Like it's the best focus group that you could ever have. And if they invested money with you, that's a paid focus group that you get to keep, you
That is
know,
true.
as long as you're delivering. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Parchelle, but that's been my personal experience with with that subject. And I'll add one last thing. This is also why I believe so strongly in actually writing your book in a community,
Mm.
as opposed to going off on our own and doing it and then coming out with it. And, like I said, I always use the analogy about the Lion King, like we're holding it up like baby Simba, like, it's like, here it is, on the mountaintop. It's like, well, yeah, nobody was looking for Simba. So.
That's hilarious. Yeah. It's true. Yeah, it's true. No one was looking for it.
Yeah.
I think it's just there is such a important like I think calling and duty for and a differentiation I think that is coming about as well in terms of when we look at if you have a book and you have a business, right? And you're looking to extend that and leverage that in different ways, I think it's also key and vital to your point that you are tapped into that market. You're tapped into that audience, right? It's you should always know the pulse, that's happening in that market and what matters to them, what's shifting. Like that's part of, that's just part of the job, I should say. Because if you do find that you just want to create something for it just to be out there, but you don't necessarily have a connection to the audience per se or your pulse on the market, it's not going to go as far as you think in most cases, or at least not be effective, right? So if we're talking about effective, impactful learning and being a source of inspiration and resource to other people, we got to be tapped in with those people as well. So that's oftentimes with any program, any kind of branding or marketing that you or program or any kind of effort in that regard, an expert is going to first tell you to identify who's your ideal client avatar, who are those people, and the kind of questions that come to mind about those people as we dive into the demographics, the psychographics, right? All those things about your audience, because all those things are important. You got to know who those people are, right? How do you answer those questions if you're not tapped in with them? And so we often find sometimes we have to give a little bit of homework to some people who are a bit newer to say, I want you to go have 10 conversations with people that are in this target and ask them these questions, understand, what is important to them, and doing that research is really, really key. Again, if you have intention in being in that market, right?
Yeah.
Get to know the people, get to know the industry, see if this is something where you do want to dedicate your time. Because to your point, just to set it and forget it isn't this world. Even in the passive income of it all, you still are likely going to be giving energy, giving time, giving resources to that continuing in terms of visibility and people being able to access it, right? It's not a set it and forget it kind of a situation. And again, if you are someone who happens to be doing business with the people in your market and that's part of your life, you're regularly in front of that audience just in what you do as an expert, then this is, you're in a much better position always.
Hmm. Yeah, again, I've seen this play out. I did it for myself, and I'm actually getting ready to do it now with my next book I'm working on. And I'm telling you something, I am really loving working out what I want to say in my content when I'm in a teaching or a community type experience like what you and I are doing right now. I did a Zoom call yesterday that I live streamed on YouTube, and I got like people coming back saying, wow, I really enjoy doing that. What I loved about it was the interactivity of it, again, because I wasn't recording it, and for some people, I know we're talking about online courses a bit. If you take absolutely nothing away from this conversation today, if you're listening to this, please, by everything I can implore you to believe in, is do not go and record a course and just go publish it and then think because it's on there, people are just going to buy it. Like, just absolutely stop whatever you're doing. Do not do that. Build that first cohort it live in real time because this is where I'm at with it. If you can't sell it before you make it, you can't sell it after you make it. That's just my personal experience,
That is real.
you know? And if you're trying to monetize, which I believe we all should be compensated for our time, but if you can't sell it before you make it, and I've actually done this to build out a course in real time and get paid to do it, I'm like, well, why can't that apply to a book? Why can't I be paid to write my book? And
Mhm.
so my thing is, but again, that's going to require messaging. That's going to require connection to me. That's going to require me, then in turn, are the people I'm attracted to who I actually want to spend time and hang out with. because it's a
Yes.
two-way thing.
Oh, yes.
And I think in a lot of us, in our desire to generate income from what we do, we'll just take anybody because they can pay us, and that's not always necessarily, the best scenario either, which can create all kinds of, situations and drama and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is, don't be afraid of that experimentation, testing, being iteration or iterative
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid of that. That's actually your sauce, your secret
100%.
sauce about that. Yeah.
I agree with you. And one other thing I'll add too is like I know specifically in this conversation we're in currently this topic, you know, for someone who is new, right, and just getting going, like I think this is very applicable. I also want to speak to someone if you've been in a position, you've been teaching your methods for years, you've got, because I also want to speak to just usually in those particular cases where people are a little bit more seasoned in teaching and bringing people through, this experience, and you have the book, right? Even more so, like there still is this importance and need to be strategic,
Mhm.
right? Because oftentimes what I find for those who are seasoned, they're in a position where essentially they're looking for more of their time to be conserved, and so in those particular cases, you do want to again be strategic about, okay, what is next, right? And if you are going to then say, I'm going to make some type of learning asset to go alongside of it, even in that, be specific, be clear. Don't just think, okay, I'm just going to make this and then it's done, right? In those particular cases, you can already start to line up the relationships and the decision makers that are going to be a good candidate for those experiences that you might produce. So I just want to say too, on the other side, right? Don't, all in all, just don't go and make something just because. Be strategic. This is
Right.
what I'm getting at, regardless of whether you're new and just starting building something for the first time, or if you're someone who's got receipts, you've got testimonials, you got all the things, but wait, wanting to save your time. Even then, consider what is going to be the best fit for my body of work, for my audience, right? And then also considers me in the process of creating it, because whatever it is that you're going to create, oftentimes there's some energy that goes into it and time. You know what I mean? So we just, again, want to be strategic about that. So that way, on the other end, there's a win, win, win across the board.
That's the board. I wanted to echo on or speak to a little bit. We've talked about experiences, and one of the key points in my recent presentation, the 10 character traits, I talk about being an experienced designer is one of the character traits. And for me, what that definition is for me is someone who is, first of all, passionate about the topic, passionate about the audience that they are serving, that we are serving, and passionate about the ways that we can then craft these different learning modalities to help them get the information, assimilate the information, and then profit, if you will, from the information, whether that's literally or figuratively. In your experience as a experienced designer, I think it'd be a fair assessment to call you that. What has been your experience with the client, either yourself or clients that you've worked with, and just how are you or your clients been able to design these opportunities and the client and the results that they end up getting? Like, what's made it enriching for them and then made it enriching for you and or you in the process of actually doing that?
Yeah, the experiences themselves that we've been putting on, and mind you, I'm one part of the strategic team here on at Osumaré Learning. So Portia Michelle Osumaré, my partner, she's actually the experience designer. So I want to shout her out especially. But usually when we go into our experiences with our clients, right, we really want to have as much as possible, a beautiful experience, something that people really walk away with feeling seen, feeling heard, and feeling truly supported through the process. And so, for us, it's really important that we always, let's say in the onboarding conversation, for example, we really get down to what is this collaborate like what could be beautiful of the outcome of this collaboration, right? How do we work best, right? Things of that nature are really, really important that we consider, right, in the overarching experience of working with us. When it comes to actually creating the experiences, again, this is where Portia really shines. but it's really again about making sure people feel seen and heard. It is that, and really taking care to every part of the experience, right? The Zoom link working, the tech experience being smooth. We think about the experience in terms of like the little nuances that we end up putting into the learning experiences. For example, we have a one of our clients is Anais Salibian. She has been a writing teacher out of Rochester, New York for decades, and she happens to be trauma informed as a writing instructor. And so her series and her body of work is called Write to Heal. So when we crafted out the experience of the learning with her, we wanted it to be very tangible and we wanted it to be very practical. So literally we created an audio course to accompany her book, right? And so in this audio course, all you need are some headphones, a notebook, and every part of that process is laid out, including time to write, right? You can still be listening. We had some music that was incorporated that really taps into, right, that experience of being in a peaceful place to write and to be safe and feel safe in writing about, the prompts. And so she just brings you through different prompts. She does some teaching, does a little bit of like, what do you call it? Not meditation, but she gets
Mhm.
you really prepared and in a relaxed state to then begin to write. And she prompts you with really, really neat writing prompts, and you're able just to write still with her in your ear, through the experience. So you're writing alongside of her as if you're in a class. And so it's really about how do we bring that learning to fit into the lives of the audience, right? And in the lives of the people. So that's just like an example, right? We really want to really have an experience that's going to feel good, that's really going to go over and beyond, right? Just the little nuances that we're able to put in there were so powerful to again go beyond just something that you can read or watch on a video, but it was actually like just an immersive experience to be created. So I think immersion, I think of, things that are experiential. Think of the five senses that are activated, right? What is actually being activated? The more senses we got online, the more tapped in the person is to the experience, So how are we factoring in all of the physical senses of the learner, in that process? And so, as we see that and progress, right, we're really also key about and we key in on like what is the belief shifts that are happening at each stage, right? Those things are important as well, right? Where is this person actually at within themselves when they're at this stage of the journey versus the next stage? So there's a lot of interesting nuances that do show up in the experiences themselves that again lends itself to a very positive and strong experience as an extension to the book.
I love that so much for so many different reasons. One thing about bringing audio into the book in and of itself, what you made me think about, Purcell, was for many authors, we think that the audio version of our book has to be just the spoken word, written out, word for word version of the book. What you just shared, which I thought was really powerful, was no, it doesn't have to be a audio transcript of the book. It can be lessons and experiences, meditations, visualizations, to help assimilate. So it's a companion, not
Yeah.
a audio version of the written book.
Right. Again, it does not have to be just the thing that we always assume, right? It can be, again, a different extension of that. Especially like you said, it can be a companion. It can be
Mhm.
something that's considered the next step of that journey, right? So if the book is one part and then you invite them to the next stage, that can be where a learning tool or asset exists. You know what I mean? And so there's also podcast and audio-based learning, like you said, that can be an accompaniment to that. So even like if the book is something that really promotes something that is procedural, right? Something that is a daily check-in, let's say. What's something daily somebody can tune into and listen to if they're on a certain journey, right? Or even looking at a podcast series that is limited, not ongoing, but
Right.
just let's say a 5 episode series that accompanies the book, right? As a next step, as a deepening, as a new exploratory experience. I'll even put out there, one of the ideas we're excited to play with this year is like a scavenger hunt type of learning where maybe you listen to the audio here and then it directs you to go to a video here and then, invites you out into the park, the next day, just kind of direct you through some things where you can actually be in different environments yourself as the reader, as the user. And you're just invited into different spaces through that feels like a scavenger hunt through an experience. So again, this is where my mind starts to go off, right? I
Yes.
guess I say once a teacher, always a teacher, right? How do we make this fun? How do we bring this alive? Like, let's not hold anything back as it relates to really making this come alive, because again, there will be a strong connection to your brand and to your body of work. The more people have beautiful experiences with it.
Mhm. I love that. You actually made me think about something that I quite frankly I had forgotten about. When I was in high school, I actually was hired by an organization that was government funded for children who were struggling with math and reading. And this fund funded individuals. I applied and got in. I was actually going to these kids' home after school and
Mm,
tutoring them with math and English and a reading and the materials that they gave me to work with these children, I didn't care for. My mom, being an educator, she knew what I was doing. And so she gave me like all these different ideas for different kinds of books. I actually like got the books and things out of my own money because I didn't want to wait for them to do the funding to do it, but it helped them retain what I was teaching them so much more. They still got the information that they needed, they still got the learning that they needed, but it was more from an experiential perspective as opposed to by rote, like parrot back what I'm saying to you, kind of thing. Like why is that? Why do we say it like this as opposed to that? What's the reason behind it? And I completely forgot about that. And what I love about what you shared is, and I said this on my last call, was how can we make this fun? This doesn't have to be, even if it's quote unquote deeper information that we're sharing, there's still a level of play or something in it to lighten it up, because if we can lighten it up, I think it'll help the information get in even better, and understanding, why am I learning this?
hmm
Why am I spending time investing in this? And to add on to what you just suggested, Parchelle, if we can piggyback that on with some kind of a community experience, even if it's like a once a month check-in, or maybe you combine it with a WhatsApp,
hmm
if you don't want to actually be on Zoom calls all the time. What I also love about what you shared was, while I adore Zoom, I'm using Zoom right now, but sometimes I just like the passivity of being able to listen while I go for a walk.
Exactly.
I don't have to be chained to my computer 24/7, And so to be able to start to shift your thinking that way, I don't know, it just opens up so many different opportunities for us. So I thank you so much for sharing those examples, because this is how I really want to help my clients as they move forward. That's how I want to help them. I want us to think outside of this box that it has to be a course with 80 videos. No one wants to watch 80 hours of videos.
It's no longer a selling point. It used to be,
Yeah.
right? It used to be a thing of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so much. I'm getting such good amount of information for what I'm putting into it. So this is so worth it. But again, nowadays the buyer, the user, the your average learner wants to do something with the information, right? They want
Yes.
the end result. They want the transformation. That's what they will pay you for in higher amounts than your book.
Yes. Absolutely. 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 That right there. That right
Because
there. I
everybody
think that's
struggles to
wonderful.
actually do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually straight. We don't have a problem understanding. We don't have a problem getting information. We have no issues there. The
Yeah.
issues with actually to be supported in the implementation and the steps needed for me to get this result
Yes.
is where you get to really shine with your expertise and the extensions of what you make possible, right? Of different learning experiences. It's kind of like I often say that your book is like the Eiffel Tower, right? It is the main attraction,
Hmm.
but it's really about the experiences around the Eiffel Tower that
Exactly.
really make the experience what it is to be in Paris, you know?
Exactly.
That's just the opportunity I think that is available to all of us as authors, and experts and thought leaders, is to consider what are the experiences around my body of work that people can engage with.
Hmm. Hmm. And build that into it. And I'll go so far as to say this, when you focus on that and then understand how to package that, then that can directly impact your ROI, because you're not just trying to sell a book or a workbook or a course. You're developing a full, well-rounded experience, that because the person really feels like you've dotted every I and crossed every T, that the money becomes secondary because they feel like they're going to be taken care of. Why would somebody choose to order this dish at this restaurant as opposed to a drive-through?
Hmm.
You know, well, someone through a drive-through is wanting fast. They don't care if it's nutritious. They just want it quick. They want to, eat it quick and keep it going, as opposed to the person who makes the reservation, gets dressed, shows up, sits there for hours, enjoying the experience. That's why the
Hmm.
steak restaurant or the lobster restaurant charges 10 times what the drive-through. Well, nowadays, I don't know so much anymore, but so that really, if you take again nothing else from this conversation, start thinking that way. And I said it on the call yesterday, think differently. It's not about thinking bigger, it's about thinking differently. And when you think differently and you're attuned to how can I make this really experiential for my customers, your antennae goes up. You start noticing things you didn't notice before, opportunities that you would been right there in front of you that you just didn't pay attention to because you're just focusing on getting out the course or getting out the book or whatever the case may be. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
wonderful. That's wonderful. So, Purcell, tell us a little bit more about how people can connect with you, want to work with you, and what's the process someone needs to kind of prep for to be able to really take advantage of your time, and how you can support them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn. That's It's one of my favorite platforms to connect with other experts. So please, I'm sure the link will be provided to you all to come and connect with me. So please do so there. And if any of this sparks any interest and you're trying to figure out where this makes sense, if it makes sense, right, for you to think in this direction, I always recommend a conversation. So if you go to my LinkedIn as well, you'll be able to see I've got some resources there along with the opportunity to schedule a conversation. So I always recommend that. Let's just talk. I want to hear more about you, hear more about your ideas and how I can be a resource in that direction, whether or not we work together. That's something I also note about the kind of person that I am, is like, I'm never someone to force anything. I always want there to be a big yes, and for us to both feel aligned with, moving forward in any direction. But I'm always down to hear more, learn more, and share resources and other, opportunities that might be available for your body of work. So I'd love to network, and I'm often in a lot of spaces and happy to make introductions to support as needed. So just hopping on a conversation with me is usually the next step, and then we can determine from there what feels good as a next fit around strategy. So we do have strategy that we make available again to sit down with us to identify what is the next thing that I can create that's going to extend and bring more impact and income with my body of work. That conversation can actually absolutely happen. And when we go to strategize that, we do that in a couple of different ways. You can either be a part of a cohort of other experts and do it in a group format to again walk away with understanding and having a very clear roadmap for your body of work and how it's meant to live in the world. Or you can do that with us one to one. So we still end up in the same result, but you get to spend time with me and my partner and really get to the nitty gritty of things together. So both of those options are available, and that's often where I recommend that we start first, right? Don't build anything until you have a clear strategy. And so that's an opportunity that's made available to either come be a part of a cohort or to join us one to one.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, please, whatever you're doing, stop building it. until you get some clarity around what really needs to go in there, because you may be putting things together that really not quite there, or it's just not landing at all. So being able to
Yeah.
get that clarity piece is going to save you a lot of time and energy, because it takes energy and time to create all of this. Um, and I also say having a second set of eyes on what you're doing that is impartial to what you've got going on can see things in a way. Like I said, a conversation recently with someone who I may be working with as a client, and I love the story. I love her story. I love like this literally like it's so story driven in ways that I don't even think that she was thinking about it from that perspective. But
Mm,
it's like as you're talking, like I'm thinking of like, oh God, we can do this with the box, and we can do, there's just so many cool things. I love this so much. And if nothing else, I hope that as you're listening, that if I know I keep saying it over and over again, but I'm gonna continue to say it because it's just the truth. If you just start thinking differently about it,
hmm
you open up a new world to yourself that is so much more rewarding and so much richer than just, I got to get this course out. I got to get this book out. Like, really take the time to look under the hood and put it like this. If you put as much attention into this as you do planning your vacation, you will be so much further along. When we think about going, you mentioned Paris a moment ago. We
hmm
think about all the things we've got to do if we've been dreaming to go to that destination, all the things we need to do to get prepped for that trip. And we all know that travel, unless you're traveling first class from start to finish, you have to really want to go somewhere nowadays to deal with all the things it takes to travel somewhere. But you're willing to do all of that because you're dreaming about the Eiffel Tower. You're
hmm
dreaming about the croissants you get to eat. You think about the walking along the Seine. You're thinking about all of the experiences you're going to get to have. So all of the drudge stuff that you have to do to get prepped to leave to go on the trip takes a back seat when you
hmm
actually arrive at the destination. So I love what you said a moment ago, is that it's about everything. The Eiffel Tower may be the image in your mind, but it's all the things around that time, whether you're there for a few days or you're there for weeks or months.
Yeah.
That's what you dream about. That's what you think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody wants to take selfies with it,
Exactly.
wherever they
Exactly.
are. So
Exactly.
it's definitely a powerful, powerful, powerful way of saying that for sure.
Absolutely. So, with that said, Parchelle and I are going to be doing an event together, a virtual event together. And as I've mentioned a couple of times in this conversation, I have an event called the Authorpreneur Decision Room. And it is a session that I have where I really break down the 10 character traits of what I believe makes a good authorpreneur. Again, authorpreneur thinks beyond just the book. And when I want to expand the definition of an author, also can mean courses, can mean, different types of content delivering mechanisms. So information about how to register for that is coming up. Will be inside of the description there to sign up for that. I've ran this presentation now 3 times. It's been so far the feedback I've gotten has been, you really made me think differently about the way I came into this and the way I'm walking out of this, and that's what I want. I will share examples with you in the presentation of entrepreneurs who are thinking differently. And yes, they're monetizing as they're building, because that's the core of what this is about. I want you to be able to monetize as you're building whatever your program is. So
Mm,
Parchelle is going to be coming on to the event as one of my keynote speakers, and we're going to be deep diving. If you enjoyed today's conversation, we're going to dive in even deeper in the entrepreneur decision. So the link to find out more about that is going to be there as well. So again, I'll have Parchelle's information if you want to contact with them, and I'm going to have information about how to sign up for the entrepreneur decision event that's coming up soon. Parcelle, is there anything else you want to leave the listener with today?
ooh, I love that you said think differently. Also in that same vein, and uh, I would say to reimagine also,
Mm,
right? Reimagine, think differently, and reimagine.
mhm,
There's so much that exists for our body of work. Your expertise is needed. Uh, Even if you feel like, oh, it's just so many other people are doing it. No, yours is unique. We need all the stories. We need everyone's perspective at the table.
Yes.
And I encourage everyone listening to, again, reimagine learning with us.
Yes. That's a good one. That's a good one to close by. I love that term. I love reimagine. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. That's what I believe Disney was built on, or Apple,
Mm,
one of those platforms. I remember hearing that when you said reimagine. I remember it's one of those bigger platforms that was using that languaging, but yeah, reimagine it. And know that we as experienced designers, if you really want to take on that identity, just imagine what's possible.
mm.
Everything is available, and especially now in the times in which we live, where there's so many resources available for us to print on demand, and we don't have to, go out and do big production print runs and all of. We don't have to do those. Invest thousands of dollars in something in hope it sells. We can get started with something, for very little, but can have major impact for our customers, for ourselves, and yes, for our bottom line. So if you
100%.
take nothing away from this conversation, I hope that you take that away as well. So, well, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today and Parchelle, and thank you so much again for being such a wonderful guest. Like I said, the minute I met you, I knew I wanted to bring you on the show. I'm so excited to be working with you on my project. I know you got a project you're working on too, which we're going to talk about that a little bit, as we move a little bit further along. And please do connect with Parchelle and connect with me. And like I said, if you enjoyed what you heard today, connect with both of us again in the upcoming Entrepreneur Decision Room event that's coming up. So, with all of that said, thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast. And remember to keep on creating and think differently.